Good evening, everyone. I am Samyukta Mahesh, the coordinator of EML, and I take great pleasure in welcoming you all to the inaugural lecture of EML 2021-22. EML is the flagship lecture series of IIT Madras that conducts year-long lectures and interviews alongside celebrities from various domains, including but not limited to media, sports, administration, literature, and politics. In the past, we have proudly hosted speakers such as Kailash Satyarthi, His Holiness Dalai Lama, Venkaiah Naidu, Indra Nui, and A.R. Rahman, among others. To continue this grand legacy, I wish to introduce our speaker for this inaugural lecture, Ms. Mallika Sarabhai. Ms. Mallika Sarabhai is an actor, writer, social activist, and an exponent in Bharatanatyam and Kuchipudi. She's the daughter of the great Indian physicist Vikram Sarabhai and Indian classical dancer Mrinalini Sarabhai. She is very well known for playing Draupadi in Peter Brook's The Mahabharata, for which she received international acclaim. She has won multiple awards, including Best Actress Award for Meena Gujari, Sangeet Natak Academy Award, IMC's Women of the Year, French Palme d'Or Award, which is the highest civilian honor in France, and the Padma Bhushan Award from the Government of India. She runs the Darpana Academy of Performing Arts, founded by her parents, which provides a variety of courses in Indian classical arts. Darpana also focuses on preserving folk and tribal culture and voicing social issues like gender inequality, communal hatred, corruption, etc. As a social activist, she played an active role in the UNICEF Peer Educators Project, Anand Shala Project, Fatehpura Model Village Project, and the UNICEF Rural Health Project. She has also started the Acting Healthy Project, which educated people on how to avoid maternal deaths. So let us just begin with the questioning. One of the key initiatives of Darpana is the usage of art to induce social and behavioral change. So how did you find this intersection between art and activism, and how would you describe the journey that has been there so far?
Well, that's not how Darpana started. When my parents got married in 1942, Amma came from a half Tamil, half Malayali family. She was one of the first generation of non-Devadasi Bharatanatyam dancers. Papa was from Gujarat. And when Amma married and settled here, they actually went away for Papa's PhD for 5 years and then came back and settled in 1947. And she found that nobody in Gujarat understood classical dance. They thought, ye to nachne wali hai. And people used to commiserate with my grandfather, saying, "Acha, aapka beta nachne wali ke sath bhag gaya." And Papa and she realized that the only way of really building up an audience and an understanding of classical arts was to start training children. And then through the children, the family would get involved, and through the family, and so on and so forth, and to perform wherever she was asked. So that's how Darpana started in 49. For the first 10 years, there were very few students. And then there was this proliferation. And then Darpana developed into various other things, like any art that needed a home was taken into Darpana. Things as diverse as Bhavai, which is the folk form of Gujarat, and the Andhra shadow puppets, which were dying in the 50s, and so on. But my mother was a thinking dancer, thinking choreographer. And she used to always say that whenever she saw something that upset her, it would come out in dance. And it started this particular journey of using it to talk of issues that bothered her and should bother society, started in the early 60s when she was learning Gujarati. And her teacher used to teach her from the newspapers, and she kept reading about young girls in Saurashtra, newly married girls, jumping into the well to commit suicide. And she started asking her friends here who spoke English, who were literature people, and they said this is because of the pressures of dowry. Now, coming from Chennai, she hadn't really heard of dowries, but she started doing this. And the story goes that Pandit Nehru, at a performance of hers, watched this and came back, and Pandit Nehru had worked very closely with my maternal grandmother on the Constitution of India and had seen Amma growing up, and he said, "Mrinal, what is this about?" And so Amma explained what was happening in Gujarat. And apparently the first white paper on what we know as dowry deaths was instituted then as a study, and then it came out that it was widespread and everywhere, and then the Dowry Acts were brought in, and a much more serious thought was given to it. I think the first Dowry Act was earlier, but nobody was paying much attention to it because it wasn't considered that it was a very serious problem. I grew up with this. When I was growing up, I thought every artist did this, that this was one of the main purposes of the arts, is to draw attention to issues that should be changed. And so it was a great surprise for me later as I grew up that my mother was one of the exceptions rather than the rule. I went into Peter Brook's Mahabharata thinking that I was not a creative person, that I could be the perfect mold for others, but that I couldn't create myself. But I had been an agitator, if you like. Not, the word activism wasn't around then. I had been an agitator in school and in college for whatever I thought was wrong. So when I was in the IIM in Ahmedabad, the girls, because there were so few in number, till our year came in, were crammed into one faculty home. And I remember at the end of my first year sitting on what I believe is the only dharna ever at the IIM Ahmedabad and agitating in front of the director and saying that unless by June you give us a hostel, I will continue sitting here. So I had been that kind of a person anyway. But when I went to do the Mahabharata, I realized that my interpretation of Draupadi was reaching women of all kinds, educated, not educated, white, black women in Harlem, and native Australians, indigenous peoples there. And I thought, my God, what a power this is. And ever since then, I have been creating for this. But even before me, there were many different artists in Darpana who were committed to using their arts for social change. How do we decide subjects? I think not by fashion and not by what is getting a grant. I need to feel passionately about something. I need to feel this is really wrong and I must talk about it. I must bring it to people's notice. And that's how it gets brought to people's notice. So my latest piece, just pre-COVID, is a piece called Colors of Her Heart. And it's about a post-Me Too world, where men and women need to come together rather than men taking this position saying, unless there is a witness in the office, I will not meet a woman, which is what it was going to. And we toured the United States with it, and it's 5 performers and a British Pakistani singer, songwriter. And it's our stories. It's our personal stories. We went through a lot of workshopping to bring out what hurts us the most, what is most vulnerable in ourselves. And those were the stories. And the audience reactions were stupendous, not only from women, but men who would come out and say, you know, I never realized that this is what I'm doing to the women in my family. I never realized that this is how it is translating. And one very well-known entrepreneur coming to me and saying, you know, I couldn't sleep after the show last night. And I realized now that I was molested as a child by my male servant. And so I have always felt through 30 years of doing this work that it breaks through walls that we set up. I mean, if I were to come to your college and tell you that, hey, I want to talk to you about rape, most men would say, thanks, yaar, we know all about rape. But if I were to come with a performance that made you think differently without this wall saying, hey, I'm a guy, yaar, I'm cool, then I am getting to you in a way which is enjoyable, because I need to keep the audience in their seat. So it can't be artistically such that they leave. But secondly, I can talk about many, many, many taboo aspects of society. I can talk about gender. I can talk about domestic violence. I can talk about how the whole patriarchal structure, from the judiciary to the government to the police, suddenly become one boys' club when it comes to rape. You know, all of these things. So Darpana's focus was not this. Darpana's focus is, in some senses, this, because we realized that there are too few of us doing this, and what an amazing impact it has.
Yes, Mom. So in continuation, you mentioned about how art talks about issues such as religious violence, gender, rape, and so on. So in continuation with that, most fine arts themselves have certain religious or patriarchal connotations in the way they have been performed over centuries. So how do you tread the line between the social commentary aspect and remaining authentic to the art form and its origins as such?
You know, in Indian terms, for India, words like purity and authenticity really shouldn't be used. I'll tell you why. Because every time that we go ahead and say this is completely Indian, what does it really mean? We are so many diverse peoples. So is it that people who look like you and I with a straight nose and eyes like this and about wheat colored are Indian? Are we authentically Indian? Is an authentic Manipuri who's probably been there, or an authentic Gond person who's probably been there several millennia before we came around, are they not Indian? Are they not authentically Indian? Are they not purely Indian? I often have this joke with people, and I say, and we actually had a program about it on television called Bharatiyat, Indianness. And I would go up to people and say, what do you consider completely Indian? And they would usually say, oh, the sari, or oh, what we eat, and so on. And none of that is true. The sari first came from a garment worn by the wife of the commander-in-chief of Alexander the Great when he came. The nose ring, which we consider such a sign of Suhag and this, that, and the other, was first spotted on Cleopatra's cat, and that statue is at the British Museum. Chilies weren't here. Wheat wasn't here. Chai wasn't here. None of this is Indian. And on the other hand, we do make everything ours. So for instance, if from Gujarat, I take what is called a Jain pizza to the poor Italians, they don't know what this is. You know, a Jain pizza, for God's sakes, no tomato, no lasan, no any of this. So what I'm saying is that authenticity is problematic. The second thing is that in the Hindu tradition, especially in the arts, it was believed that even men had to get rid of their patriarchy and think as a woman in order to attain that which we call God. So many of our writers, Siddhalingeshwara, who was one of the people who gave birth to Kuchipudi, for instance, used to write about himself in the feminine because he felt that men had egos that would never allow them to demean themselves as much as they needed to in order to attain truth. So this aspect of patriarchy also needs to be looked at. When we are talking of Radha and Krishna's love, one way is to look at it as patriarchy. The other way is to look at it as the love that we understand the most between a woman and a man. Then you put it in context of this thing that a woman isn't afraid to feel vulnerable. A man is, because of our society. And then you see it as the seeker and the sought. And the whole patriarchy aspect is something that has come because of our other baggage, which has come I mean, patriarchy has been around for several thousand years. So that is one aspect of it. The second is that about 6 or 7 years ago, I started writing my own lyrics. It came from a question that my son asked me while he was studying and dancing in London. And he said that, you know, Ma, I'm sitting here and I'm talking about the great temple of Brihadishwara and oh Shiva, when will you come? I'm waiting for you, and so on and so forth. And he said, it has absolutely no relevance to me. So what do I do? So I sat and wrote about, in the same context, I wrote in English, somebody translated it into Tamil, and it was set in exactly the same way of a Varnam as a Pallavi, Anupallavi, and so on, or as a Padam, oh Krishna, why don't you come, etc. But translated into, for instance, oh Krishna, why doesn't the woman I love me as much? Because she's always bent on her career. Every time I phone her, she says, I will call you back later. I'm at a meeting. Oh, Krishna, won't you have her pick up the phone? Now, this is still very much in the context of Bharatanatyam. It's just that perhaps if the writers were writing today, they would be writing similarly. They would be writing about, another one that I have written is about honor killings. And again, it's as a padam to Krishna, saying, Krishna, in a world filled with hate, how can love ever be wrong? When a mother loves a child, society applauds. When a family arranges a wedding, society applauds. But if a woman falls in love, she is asked, what is his gotra? What is his religion? What is his caste? Or if two women fall in love, they will be stoned. Krishna, you loved Radha. She was older than you. And yet when I love a younger man, why am I called names? Krishna, why is this right? Now, these are things that you will relate to. These are things that young people all around us relate to. So nothing limits us into using songs that were 200 years old or 2000 years old. Bharatanatyam is something that has to be a reflection on my society. In those days, perhaps the question of good and evil, as illustrated through our mythology, were the most important. Ethics was very important. Ethics should be very important today, but more about that later. And it isn't. So, I mean, I could write a padam to Kubera saying, why is it that everybody thinks you are Lakshmi, and why is there not a difference between Lakshmi and Kubera? What we should be looking for is Lakshmi, which is wisdom. But we follow Kubera. And why is everything just money? We have the possibility of creating the lyrics that matter to us. I can either go completely out of Bharatanatyam, or I can stay completely within the canon of Bharatanatyam and still have the freedom to talk about what I want to. Does that make sense to your question on patriarchy?
Yes, Mom. So while we are speaking about traditional art forms, it brings me to my next question. Do you feel like that traditional art forms or classical arts are under the threat of decline because of Western influences? And do you feel that they can coexist in the Indian society as such?
Because you like pizza, do you hate sambar?
No, Mom.
Because I wear jeans, do I hate silk sarees? No. I think there is a greater revival in the interest in classical arts, thankfully no longer within the borders of India, because we remain slaves of the white rule and will do and copy the slaves in the worst way possible, slavish way possible, without taking any of their work ethics. So we will get into tight jeans in climates that really shouldn't be confining us to jeans. We will be wearing shirts and t-shirts that stink in our perspiration-filled temperatures. But nothing else. So luckily, there are hundreds of people across the world, thousands of people who want to learn. And now with us being forced to go online, it has opened up a huge avenue. You know, for years, people have been saying to me, why don't you open a Darpana branch here? Why don't you open a Darpana branch here? And I've always said that Darpana is about the way it teaches. It's about what it teaches and the way it teaches. Does it teach dancing like a gymnast, or does it try and bring in all the cultural values, the meanings of our stories, peeling away the outer meanings, going into the inner layers? And now I can do it. So no, I'm not at all afraid. And I think everything should coexist. And then the best things will survive and the others will just wither away.
Yes, Mom. So I wish to discuss more about the digital aspect. So especially during the pandemic times, have performing arts shifted completely to the online mode? I mean, have they been able to shift successfully, or have there been any challenges that have been there in this scenario?
Okay. I'm going to show you something that we have just made for schools, because it brings together how we use technology in Darpana especially, and how we have taken the issue of gender and worked. It's just a 5-minute piece, and I would love to share it with you. Vasant, can I have gender bender?
Hi. And abal, weakness. So what is a woman? A woman is called abala. Or take khatlo and khatli. A khatlo is a big, strong man, and a khatli is a poor, delicate one. So, is this a problem? Of course this is a problem. Can kids change it? Of course you can change it. And we must, because it limits us. This kind of stereotyping limits us, limits our growth, limits where we want to be, who we want to be. So you need to fight it anywhere you see. And it's everywhere. Tell me, does your mother treat you and your sister differently? Do your parents treat you and your brother differently? In school, do girls get pink and boys get blue? Do the pictures in your textbook show boys as active and girls as playing or picking flowers? So, wherever it is, question it. Do not limit yourself to these words. Scream it out, change it. How can you use the arts? Oh, the arts are an amazing language. I'm going to take you to Gully Boys. Yes, I worked with them to talk about gender all across America. तेरी खुले रखो कान मुंह पे पट्टी बांध सीना कहना मान बात तेरी अनजान लगे जैसे अपमान सीना करे ले जान मत करे इनकार
આ પતે ને એક્ઝેક્ટ તાળીઓ પડે છે ને ત્યાં બંધ કરી કાઢજો. There was Bharatanatyam for you as well. But you see what I mean of the use of technology in the whole thing and how you can use it to actually enhance. Also technology, you know, when an audience member is sitting there and they're looking at a performance, they don't know actually where to concentrate. So they are taking in the lab. With technology, and with technology not used as a documentary, but technology used in its fullest, one can give a 360-degree view of artists. One can actually go to the face when one wants to, go to the feet when one wants to, and so on and so forth. So I mean, we've been using technology and performance for 20 years in Darpana. We have a department called Darpana for Communications, and my artistic director, Yadavan Chandran, is an amazing filmmaker who's very open. So we keep doing all sorts of experiments. I think technology is great.
Yes, for personal note. So your parents are both legends in their own disciplines, without a doubt. So how much of an influence have they been in your artistic pursuit? And what are the valuable lessons that you learned from each of them?
They taught me the necessity to dream. To dream of what could be considered impossible. To dream beyond my personal bank balance. To dream beyond my personal acquisition of a Mercedes car or having a holiday in Alaska. Had my father not dreamt, there would be no ISRO. Had my mother not dreamt, we wouldn't have had 25,000 people across the world carrying forth the torch of India. What do you dream of today? I wanted to ask this question later, but you brought this up, so I'm asking you. What do we dream of today? What does an IITian dream of? Getting a good job, getting a higher pay. But don't you think that we need to change society and that you can change it? Don't you think that you are the first people at the forefront of this incredibly privileged education, and that you should be bigger than your smallest self, that you should write your own scripts for the next 30 years of this nation? Elections are all that politicians think of. But had Pandit Nehru not had dreams, there would be no IIT. Had Papa and them not had dreams together, and Homi Bhabha and all of them, there would be no Bhabha Atomic Center, there would be no Electronics Commission, there would be no Indian Institute of Management. None of these would exist. There would be no research in this country. They were not dreaming of the next election. Of course, you must have your car and you must see that you're not worried, but it ends there and it can't. You must become the flag bearers that you don't go into a matrimonial ad saying, fair Brahmin woman wanted as a bride. Break that. Don't, when you have children, don't treat them as boy or girl or Hindu or Muslim. Make them humane. Ask yourself, have the courage to ask yourself, whose script am I running? Is this my script? Is this really who I want to be? Or am I playing out a script given by my aunt and uncle-in-law and so on and so on? Because 99.9% of us play out somebody else's script. And when we are dying or something, we suddenly realize this is not the life I wanted. You have the possibility, you have the ability to dream big, dream of transforming something, not your own self, but of being the transformative forces. You have that privilege. That's what my parents taught me. They taught me that each of us must have a higher purpose. Otherwise, we would have been born into ants or something. And that we must have a dream of a better future for everybody. And we must, even if we do this much, it cannot not be a dream. How many of us dare to dream anymore? Education doesn't let us dream. Our parents don't let us dream. The fact that all of you have probably taken education loans doesn't allow you to dream. But we must, in spite of all of that, we must say, okay, I'm going to spend the next 15 years getting the highest paid job, getting all these duties fulfilled. I will have a house, I will have a bank balance, I will have produced 2 kids. I will have perhaps a wife who's doing the same. Then what do I want to do with mine? What is it that makes my life worthwhile? Surely it's not getting the accolade from your little community. I mean, why do people still ask me about my parents? Because they had meanings outside. It's not because they came from wealthy families. Not at all. It is because they dreamt for this nation and then their dreams were fulfilled. I mean, I remember how many people laughed at Papa when he wanted to make a satellite dish out of chicken mesh. He made it. It worked. And then the foreign governments came to see how it could be made at 100th the cost of what they were doing. I mean, who would have thought in those years that we would carry rockets on cycles, and that when a part given by Russia and a part given by France didn't fit, those scientists sat with screwdrivers and rubbing away so that the actual nut and bolt fitted. Nobody thought that, but that were dreams. So my urge to you is that there's one thing you take away from my talk with you. It is have the courage to dream, and dream big, and don't only dream money. It's such a boring necessity. Necessity it is. And of course, you must do everything to be comfortable and so on. But what is the point of my having 5 cars? I only have 1 bum to sit in 1 car. If that is what makes me feel respected, then I really need to introspect. Because my sense of self is 0. If I think that the suit I wear is what is going to give, the brand managers will convince you to do that. But go in. I mean, COVID has shown us what is important and what is not. And if we still don't learn, it will be such a huge pity. And you like I, come from such an educational privilege. So that's what my parents gave me. The possibility of dreaming.
That's very nice to hear, Mom. So that actually concludes the questions from our side. But now we have a showcase performance from the Classical Arts Club, IIT Madras. Actually, the convener, Ananya Sangeeta Nagarjuna, will be has prepared a special performance for you, and we'd like you to see it.
Takajum, 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 tadingina tu tajum, takajum, 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 tadingina tu 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 tajum, 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 tajum. Tadingina tu tadingina tu tadingina tu tadingina tum tadingina tum tadingina tu tadingina tu tadingina tu tadingina tu Om என்று மொழிவாய் மேலோங்கும் நன்மை அறிவாய் Om என்று மொழிவாய் மேலோங்கும் நன்மை அறிவாய் ஓங்காரமாய் ஒளி நிறைந்த பரமானந்த கணநாதனை பணிந்து ஓம் 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 தீங்காக எழும் தீராவினைகள் ஓங்காமல் உனை தீண்டாமல் தீங்காக எழும் தீராவினைகள் ஓங்காமல் உனை தீண்டாமல் நீங்காத பேரின்பம் தந்து துதிக்கையது சுழற்றி அரும் நிறுத்த நடம் ஓம் பெற்றவனாதனின் பொற்பதமீதினில் நல்லருகம் புல் நலமுடன் தூவி சிற்பரனே எனை பெற்றவனே அரும் தற்பரனே நீ தயை புரிவாயன பற்றிடுவாய் பல நூறாயிரம் பலன் உற்றிடுவாய் முற்றிடும் வினைகள் அற்று விழும் சுற்றிடும் பகைகள் விட்டகலும் கற்றிடும் கலைகள் நற்றுயரும் வெற்றி தினம் உனை சுற்றி வரும் தகஜம் தக ததினி தகிட்ட தக தகஜம் தரிகிட்ட சித்தளாங்குதோ தகஜம் தகணம் தஜடு தகிட்ட தக தகணம் தரிகிட்ட சித்தளாங்குதி தஜம் ஜம் தஜம் தகஜம் தகயன மத்தகத்து முகஞான கொழுந்தை ஓம் என்று மொழிவாய் ஓம் என்று மொழிவாய் ஓம் என்று மொழிவாய்.
Thank you.
That was Ananya Sangeeta, the convener of the Classical Arts Club, IIT Madras. Earlier this week, we had a contest on our social media handles of EML where students got to guess the speaker and receive a chance to interact with her. And we have the contest winners here with us to personally ask you the questions themselves. So now I ask Prashant to begin.
Hi, Prashant. Internet issues again?
I think that's the case. So we'll just move on. Rishikesh, can you switch on your video and ask your question?
Yeah. Just a sec. Yeah. Hello, ma'am. I'm Rishikesh. I'm from Materials Engineering Department. So basically, my question is, what is your highest point of experience in dancing? Basically, in terms of spirituality, like have you had any like that experience?
I have, and it came very early. You know, as I was growing up, the one thing I knew, Rishikesh, is that I didn't want to dance. I didn't want to be a dancer because it was too much hard work. You know, people only see the glamorous side. I would watch my mother with a cut foot and high fever, still having to perform. And I said, "Ye humse nahi hoga." So I actually came to professional dancing relatively late. I had finished my IIM MBA. I had finished a PhD. Yes. And I woke up one morning in this eureka moment saying, I want to dance. And Amma immediately started creating for the two of us. And the first piece she created was a piece about Meera, but where she played the internal Meera, who was always wanting Krishna, and I played the external young girl who wanted to do things that young girls wanted to do. And only when the two come together does she become Meerabai.
Yes.
So it was the inner-outer struggle. And this was the first time I was dancing professionally with her. And I remember this distinctly. As I was dancing, I had this astral experience. And I felt that I was floating at the top of the stage, looking down at two bodies, but who had one soul. And I remember this, it gives me goosebumps 40 years after it happened. And I think that was my most extraordinary spiritual experience.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishikesh. Anamika, you can unmute and ask your question now.
Hi, ma'am. Ma'am, what does a normal day in the life of Manika Sarabhai look like?
COVID has made me much more prone to answer that. Pre-COVID, I would have said, I don't know. In the COVID era, I wake up, as I always have, at about 5:45 in the morning. I have many dogs, and I need to take them down. So I wake up, and then it's me time for about an hour when I read the newspapers and listen to music. Then yoga, then usually, again, pre-COVID, 3 or 4 hours of rehearsing. And for the rest of the day, doing the administrative work or writing or researching a new piece and so on. Evening, looking at supervising classes, seeing whether other classes were doing, giving lectures. I continue giving a lot of talks to different organizations. Research is a very strong part of my day. So all of that, while my children were growing up, all of that as well. Now they're grown and gone. So it's the dogs, and my dogs follow me everywhere. And usually it was a lot of traveling. I would be traveling like 20 days in a month, either to perform or to lecture, usually to perform. But all of that has been brought to zero just now. But we are still creating new work within the context of being locked down. And I've just written my first 2 children's stories. During the COVID lockdown, I also wrote my first book, which is a book on my crazy journey through wellness and health, and that is being published by Juggernaut next month. So I have actually been writing things other than scripts for a change.
Thank you, Mom. Prashant, have you resolved the network issues?
Hello. Hi. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi.
I wanted to ask that since you have done your MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, so how was your transition after pursuing an MBA and from academic career to starting an acting career in a short time?
You know, Prashant, when I was about 6 years old was when IIM was being planned. And Louis Kahn, the architect of the IIM, and my father would be sitting on the carpet in my sitting room, in our sitting room, and I would be sitting on Papa's lap. And I would pester him and say, why are you starting this? What does it mean? And I remember Papa's early dreams, and he said, you know, we are a nation that needs to be built very quickly. And we need management professionals who will go into the fields of education, healthcare, agriculture, so that they can transform sectors like that, which affect so many of our poorest and weakest people. Papa did not have a dream of creating managers who then went in just to fatten their own bank balances. That was not the dream. I was brought up on that dream. Managing a not-for-profit and managing it so that everybody feels flourishing and everybody feels fulfilled is much more difficult than managing something where money is the real whip. And I have managed Darpana. Darpana does much more than just teach dance. We run projects in hundreds of villages over the years, using the performing arts to talk of things as diverse as maternal mortality and the destruction of the environment. As I said, I do a lot of research. So it was never a transition. I never wanted to wear a stupid suit and go to a bank job or become an entrepreneur for creating toothpaste. That was never the intention. The intention was not to go into the arts, but the intention was never to have a job that made me a corporate person. Does that answer you?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mom. And with that, we come to the end of the lecture. On behalf of the entire team at EML IIT Madras, I wish to thank the speaker once again for sparing her valuable time with us, answering our questions and offering us an insight into the world of performing arts. And I'm sure all of us have gained valuable takeaway from her answers. I would also like to thank the Classical Arts Club and all members of the IIT Madras student body who engaged in our social media contest and this lecture as a whole. Please stay tuned to EML because we have an exciting lineup of speakers in the following weeks that we are sure you'll enjoy. And until next time, this is Samyukta and the entire team of EML signing off, and good night.